what a crowd. And the word legend and hero, those words are thrown around a lot these days, but tonight we're honored to have a true hero and American legend here, someone who spent his life work making the United States a better place for everyone. Welcome to Sam Houston State University. I'm Abby Zink, Dean of the College of Humanity and Social Sciences, and it is my extreme pleasure and honor to kick off tonight's program. The National Book Awards Festival at Sam Houston State University is a joint project of the university and the National Book Foundation that brings recent National Book Award winners and finalists to Huntsville each year for a series of literary events. Putting together an event of this magnitude literally and figuratively takes a village. I want briefly to thank the following for their contributions: President Dana Hoyt and Provost Richard Egglesay for their financial and academic support of this event, the City of Huntsville and the Huntsville Independent School District for helping to bring these events to the community, Dr. Amanda Nallen O'Banion, our National Book Awards Festival Coordinator, and Deanna Gaertner, and Brittany Johnson from the SHSU Dean's Office for organizing this event. The SHSU departments and private donors who ensured that every 8th grader at Mance Park Middle School received a free copy of March Book 3. Those names are listed in the program. Dr. Jeff Littlejohn and Urban Malachi, who are co-charge chairs, who are fabulous and who are co-chairs of the CHSS Diversity and Inclusion Committee. They led the effort to begin a diversity read program in partnership with Student Affairs Vice President Frank Parker. More than 100 students gathered last week to discuss March Book 3 in advance of this event. Our student volunteers who are working this event tonight, and so many others who played a part in organizing this event, including the English department and especially the MFA in Creative Writing, Editing, and Publishing faculty. On a programming note, Book Up Bash, a community celebration of children's literacy formerly held during the National Book Awards Festival, and we've now held in September. Look for more information on that in late summer. It's now my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our next two speakers, Mr. Benjamin Samuel and President Dana Hoyt. Benjamin Samuel is Director of Programs at the National Book Foundation. In addition to his work as Director of Programs, Mr. Samuel is Editor-at-Large at Electric Literature and co-founder of its weekly fiction magazine, Recommended Reading. He has an MFA in fiction from Brooklyn College, and his writing has been published by McSweeney's, The Rumpus, Atticus Books, the LA Review of Books, Flavor Wire, Publishers Weekly, and elsewhere. Mr. Samuel will provide introductory remarks about the National Book Foundation. Dr. Dana Hoyt has served as president of Sam Houston State University since 2010. She's the 13th president of the university and the first woman president in its 138-year history. Under her leadership, Sam Houston State University has experienced tremendous growth in students. We're the 14th fastest growing university in the United States. In academic programs such as the creation of the College of Health Sciences and the proposed College of Osteopathic Medicine, and in infrastructure as all the cranes around campus attest, to support our now more than 20,000 students. She has been a tremendous, and I want to underline tremendous, supporter of the National Book Awards Festival and of the liberal arts and sciences here at SHSU. President Hoyt will introduce our speakers. I now invite Mr. Samuel to the podium. He will be followed by President Hoyt.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. It is such a pleasure to be here on behalf of the National Book Foundation here in Texas. I've already been offered a cup of sweet tea, and I offended people by asking for it unsweetened. I'd like to thank our partners at Sam Houston State University, particularly to Professor Amanda Nallen O'Banion, who's integral in putting this together. And of course, many, many thanks are due to Congressman John Lewis, Andrew Aydin, and Nate Powell for joining us here tonight. March is an inspiring and essential book, and we're enormously grateful to have been able to recognize it as a winner of the 2016 National Book Award for Young People's Literature. So it's wonderful to see so many people here, and I'm sure you're eager to hear from the authors of March. But first, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the National Book Foundation and the work we do. In addition to celebrating remarkable books like March through the National Book Awards, we're committed to empowering readers and building new audiences for literature in America. As part of these efforts, we recently launched the Book Rich Environments Initiative with the Department of Education, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and other essential partners to distribute over 250,000 free books in book deserts around the country. We also champion and support the important work of librarians, teachers, and other literary activists through our Innovations in Reading Prize, which will be announced this Monday. And we engage and inspire young readers through our Book Up program, which has had a home here in Texas for many years. So to learn more about our work, I hope you'll visit our website, nationalbook.org, or follow us on Twitter at nationalbook. And thank you for joining us tonight. It's now my pleasure to turn this podium over to President Dana Hoyt.
Thank you, Benjamin. It's my honor to introduce the authors tonight, so I'm very proud to be up here for that. I want to say why March is important. Almost anyone living in the South during the Civil Rights Movement can understand the magnitude of Mr. John Lewis's accomplishments overturning illegal segregation. Those accomplishments are evident in all of our public spaces, our polling places, our schools. But for many young students, the Civil Rights Movement seems to exist in an era wholly different from the world we live in today. The March trilogy, which Mr. Lewis co-authored with Andrew Aydin and artist Nate Powell, is bringing this part of our country's troubled history to life for readers of all ages, because we must not forget. Writer George Santayana famously said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." March is keeping the plight for equality at the forefront of our collective memory. So now I'm going to give you a little background on each one of these authors. Andrew Aydin went to work in Congressman John Lewis's office shortly after college. It was Aydin, an Atlanta native, who came up with the idea of creating a graphic novel series based on Lewis's life in the Civil Rights Movement. Aydin could see the impact graphic novels have on young people. He also knew that Mr. Lewis was influenced early in his life by a 1950s comic book, Martin Luther King and the Montgomery Story. Lewis and Aydin began work on the project with Powell's help, and in 2013, the first volume of March debuted. Aydin holds a Master of Arts in Public Policy from Georgetown University and now serves as Digital Director and Policy Advisor to Congressman Lewis in Washington, D.C. He continues to write, and he regularly lectures around the country. Nate Powell is the first and only illustrator to win the National Book Award. He is originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, but spent many of his elementary school years in Montgomery, Alabama, not far from the old Troy Highway that led to John Lewis's childhood home. Powell's first exposure to comics was watching Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk on TV. By age 14, he was not only drawing but publishing his own comics. He credits the initial awakening of his social conscience to Chris Claremont's X-Men and the band Anthrax, which explored issues of racism, sexism, xenophobia, and other social criticism. Powell is currently writing and drawing his next book, Come Again. Now I'm honored to introduce Mr. John Lewis, who served for over a quarter century as the U.S. representative for Georgia's 5th District. His service to our nation extends much further than that. It was nearly 60 years ago that Mr. Lewis as a young student, began practicing nonviolent activism at lunch counter sit-ins in Nashville, Tennessee. His leadership there and with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee helped propel the Civil Rights Movement from the first freedom rides to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That crucial work, along with his strength of principle and fortitude, has made him an American hero and legend. Lewis remains committed to nonviolent action, what some call love in action. As is stated in the event program, Lewis was awarded the Medal of Freedom in 2011 by President Barack Obama and was the first recipient of the John F. Kennedy Profile in Courage Lifetime Achievement Award. And I was going to say help me in a warm welcome, but you obviously did. Congressman John Lewis, we are honored to have you tonight.
Madam President, Mr. Provost, members of the faculty, staff, members of the student body, visitors, and friends, thank you so much for welcoming us here tonight. We're delighted, we're pleased to be here at this great university. Now, I didn't grow up in a big city like Huntsville, or San Antonio, or Dallas, or Houston. And I grew up in a big city like Richmond, Virginia, or Buffalo, New York, or Chicago. I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. In March, book 1, Andrew Aydin and Nate Powell, these two young friends of mine, two young brothers, we tell the story of my growing up. My father had been a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. I grew up very poor, with 6 brothers and 3 sisters. Wonderful mother and wonderful father. But in 1944, when I was 4 years old, I do remember when I was 4. How many of you remember when you were 4? What happened to the rest of us? My father had saved $300, and a man sold him 110 acres of land for $300. My father still owns this land today. My family still owns this land today. On this farm, we raise a lot of cotton and corn, lots of peanuts. I don't eat too many peanuts today. I ate so many peanuts when I was growing up in rural Alabama, I just don't want to see any more peanuts. Sometime I would be out there working in the field, falling behind, out there in the hot sun, and my mother would say, boy, you need to catch up, you're falling behind. And I would say, this is hard work. And she would say, hard work never killed anybody. I said, well, it's about to kill me. So growing up there on that farm, we tell the story in March, book 1. And when I was a little child, about 8 or 9 years old, I fell in love with raising chickens. Now I noticed you have some chicken around here. But I fell in love with raising chickens. Any of you know anything about raising chickens? Don't fool me. If you don't know this, I don't know. I know some of you know something about eating chicken, cooking chicken, but you don't know anything about raising chicken. Let me tell you what I had to do as a little boy growing up in rural Alabama during the 40s and the 50s. When the setting hen was set, we would take the fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you may be saying, now John Lewis, why do you mark a fresh egg with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen would get on that same nest, and there would be some more fresh eggs. You had to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? You don't follow me, you really don't. So when these little chicks were hatched, I would fool these setting hens. I would cheat on these setting hens. And when I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most loving thing to do. It was not the most nonviolent thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. But I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator I hatcher from the Southern Bug store. Any of you old enough to remember the Southern Bug catalog? Yeah. You really do? Yes. That big book? Yeah. That heavy book? Yeah. That thick book? Yeah. Some people call it a wish book, or I had this, I wish I had that. So I just kept on wishing and kept on cheating on this and again. But as a little child, about 8 or 9 years old, I wanted to be a minister. One of my uncles had Santa Claus to bring me a Bible. I learned to read the Bible. So with the help of my brothers and sisters and first cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard. And my brothers and sisters and cousins lined outside but around the chicken yard. And I would start speaking or preaching to the chicken yard. And when I look back on it, some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen. But I'm convinced that some of those chickens that I preached to in the 40s and the 50s tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listen to me today. As a matter of fact, some of those chickens are just a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. That's enough of that. If we visit the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Tuskegee, I saw those signs that said, white men, colored men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting, white boys, colored boys, white girls, colored girls. Well, come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why? And they would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way. Don't get in trouble. But in 1955, 15 years old in the 10th grade, I heard the Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on the radio. The action of Rosa Parks, the words and leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. inspired me to find a way to get in the way, to get in trouble. So in 1956, at the age of 16, with some of my brothers and sisters and cousins, we went downtown Troy to the public library, trying to get a library card, trying to check out some books. We were told by the librarian that the libraries are whites only and not for color. I never went back to that library to July 5th, 1998 for book signing, my first book, Walking with the Wind. Hundreds of blacks and white citizens showed up. End of the book signing, they gave me a library card. It says something about the distance we've come and the progress we've made in laying down the burden of race in America. In 1957, at the age of 17, I applied to attend Troy State College, now known as Troy University. Submitted my application, my high school transcript. I never heard a word from the school. So I wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I didn't tell my mother, my father, any of my sisters or brothers, any of my teachers. I told Dr. King in that letter that I needed his help. He wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket, invited me to come to Montgomery to meet with him. In the meantime, I had applied at a local college in Nashville, Tennessee. I was accepted. Uncle mine gave me $100 bill. Gave me one of those big foot lockers. Those of you maybe a little older, do you know anything about the big foot locker, big trunks? Yeah. That you can hold them open, put them in a bag, had drawers and curtains, you can hang clothing on a rack, put something in the drawer. Well, in September 1957, with everything that I own, except those chickens, and took a Greyhound bus to Nashville, Tennessee, to go to school. And while I was there for about 3 weeks, I told one of my teachers that I've been in contact with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This teacher knew Dr. King. They studied together at Morehouse College in Atlanta. So he informed Dr. King that I was in Nashville. Martin Luther King Jr. got back in church and suggested when I was home for spring break to come and see him. So in March of 1958, by this time I'm 18 years old, I boarded a bus to Montgomery. And a young lawyer by the name of Fred Gray, who'd been a lawyer for Rosa Parks, Dr. King in the Montgomery movement, became our lawyer during the Freedom Rise in 1961, and our lawyer during the March from Selma to Montgomery in 1965. Met me at the Greyhound bus station, drove me to the First Baptist Church in downtown Montgomery, and ushered me into the pastor's study of the office of the church. I saw Martin Luther King Jr. and the Reverend Ralph Abernathy standing behind a desk. And Dr. King said, "Are you John Lewis? Are you the boy from Troy?" And I said, "Dr. King, I am John Robert Lewis." He gave my whole name, but he still called me the boy from Troy. He said, "If you really want to go to Troy State, we will support you. We may have to sue the state of Alabama. We may have to sue Troy State, but you may have our support." So your family could lose their land, your home could be burned or bombed, but we will support you. I went back and had a discussion with my mother and my father, and they didn't want to have anything to do with my attempt to enter Troy State College. I continued to study in Nashville. And it was in Nashville, under the leadership of a young minister by the name of James Lawson, that we studied the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. Every Tuesday night, a small group of students from Vanderbilt University, Peabody College, Tennessee State, O'Hare Medical School, and American Baptist, FIST, to study and study. And then we had what we call role playing or social drama. And then we start sitting in. Be sitting there in an orderly, peaceful, non-violent fashion, and someone would come up and spit on us, or put a lighted cigarette out in our hair or down our backs, pull us off the lunch down the stool. And we were told, we were warned, if we continue to sit in, we would be arrested and taken to jail the next time. Now I thought about it. Never been arrested, never seen the inside of a jail. But if I were going to be arrested and go to jail for the first time, I wanted to look fresh. I wanted to look clean. I wanted to look sharp. So I went to a used men's store in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, and bought a suit. A vest came with it. And that's what I wore on that day, February 27, 1960. I did look clean. I did look fresh. I did look sharp. You know how much I paid for this suit? $5. If I still had this suit today, I probably could sell it for a lot of money. But I don't have it. I don't know what happened to this. The first time I got arrested and went to jail, I felt free. I felt I've been liberated. And during the 60s, I was arrested 40 times. And since I've been in Congress for 5 more times. And I'm probably going to get arrested again for something. Philosophy is very simple, and I hope it's coming through in March, book 1, book 2, and book 3, that when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation, a mission, and a mandate to say something, to do something, to speak up and speak out and get in the way. Remember, my mother, my father said, don't get in trouble. I got in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. And that's what is needed today now more than ever before. For people to speak up and speak out. Look, my first trip to Washington, D.C. was in 1961. 21 years old, had all of my hair, and a few pounds lighter, to go on something called the Freedom Ride. Just think, in 1961, the same year that President Barack Obama was born, the same year, black people and white people could be seated together on a Greyhound bus or a Trailway bus, leaving the nation's capital to travel to Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. We were on our way to New Orleans to test a decision of the United States Supreme Court. I remember the night before we left, as a group, we went to a little Chinese restaurant on Capitol Hill. Growing up in rural Alabama, attended school in Nashville, I never had Chinese food before, never been to a Chinese restaurant. But during that meal that night, someone said to us, you should eat well, because this may be like the last supper. We arrived in a little town in South Carolina, Rock Hill, South Carolina. My seatmate was a young white gentleman. The two of us got off the Greyhound bus and tried to enter a so-called white waiting room. We were attacked by members of the Klan. We were left lying in a pool of blood. Many years later, to be exact, in February '09, one of the guys who beat us came to my office in Washington. He was in his 70s with his son in his 40s. He said, Mr. Lewis, I'm one of the members of the Klan who beat you and your seatmate. Will you forgive me? Will you accept my apology? His son started crying, he started crying. I said, yes, I forgive you, I accept your apology. They hugged me, I hugged them back, and the three of us cried together. It is the power of the way of peace, the way of love, the power of the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke a great deal about redeeming the soul of America, about building the beloved community, about laying down the burden of hate, division, and separation, and creating a community at peace with itself. It is our hope, it is our prayer, that March will inspire another generation of young people and people not so young to stand up, to speak up and speak out and get in good trouble, necessary trouble, get in the way. I know that people all across America today are saying nothing has changed. But I said, come and walk in my shoes. I will show you change. The signs that I saw when I was brought up in Alabama, when I went to school in Nashville, when I moved to Georgia, the only places our children and their children will see those signs today will be in a book, in a museum, on a video. We've come a distance, made a lot of progress, but we still have a distance to go. There's a man by the name of Aydin Randolph, was the leader of the March on Washington in 1963. Was born in Jacksonville, Florida, moved to New York City, became a champion of civil rights, human rights, and labor rights. When we were planning the march, he would say over and over again, maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. That is true today more than ever before. So it doesn't matter whether we're African American, whether we're white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. We're one people, we're one family, we all live in the same house. Dear brothers and sisters. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put it another way. We must learn to live together. If not, we will perish as fools. I believe it is up to the next generation, to students, to young people, to young children to get out there and lead us to a better place. And if we get it right here in America, and I believe we would get it right, we will serve as a model for the rest of the world. We can do it. I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic about the future. Look, I almost lost my life on that bridge in Selma. Some people died in that campaign. I was beaten and left bloody, unconscious. But I'm still hopeful, still optimistic. I'm prepared to go on to see what the end will be. So let's continue to go and press on and use March as a blueprint, as a roadmap, as a guide. Thank you very much.
How do you follow that? First, it's an honor to be here. I've always wanted to come to Sam Houston. I didn't know I'd have to win a National Book Award to do it. That's not the easiest thing in the world. You know, there's actually only 2 members of Congress who've ever been honored by the National Book Foundation. One was Senator John F. Kennedy in 1956, is that right? Who was a finalist. And John Lewis is the first member of Congress actually to ever win the National Book Award. And he did it with a comic book. Don't forget that when people tell you that things are the way they are. You can change them. My name is Andrew Aydin, and I serve as Digital Director and Policy Advisor to the Congressman in Washington. It basically means I tweet for a living. You laugh, that's a big deal nowadays. It's huge. I'm from the South, I can't even fake the accent. But I tried. So how did we get here? It all started in 2008. I had actually started in the Congressman's office answering his mail about 10 years ago, which essentially is answering a lot of Dear John letters. And so I described it to my mother the first time. Never let me live that down. And by the summer of 2008, I'd been asked to serve as the Congressman's press secretary on his re-election campaign. It was a summer of hope and change. Barack Obama was sweeping through the Democratic primary. And the Congressman, man, he works very hard. And you know, he had two opponents that summer, and he was beating them pretty bad, non-violently. But we were still working really hard. I mean, you're talking 60, 70-hour weeks. And it was coming down to the end of the campaign, so we started talking about what we were going to do when the campaign was over. And some folks said they were going to go to the beach. Some folks said they were going to go see their parents. I said I was going to a comic book convention. That's Dragon Con, if you've ever heard of it. But much like you all here, I got laughed at. Except there was a deep voice that said, don't laugh. There was a comic book during the movement, and it was very influential. And it was John Lewis standing up for me as he stood up for so many of us. That comic book was called Martin Luther King and the Montgomery Story. It was the first time I'd ever heard of it, and I went home that night. And I looked it up on the internet. And it was beautiful. It was this 1950s house style. It was a gorgeous introduction to Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, to Gandhi, to nonviolent civil disobedience. And I remember sitting there, looking at my computer, having spent the summer hearing the congressman tell the story of SNCC to young people over and over again. The same young people I grew up with. I was born and raised in the congressman's district. He's been my congressman since I was 3 years old. But these were stories I'd never heard. The story of what the young people were responsible for doing during the civil rights movement. I'd been told the story of gods and kings. But I'd never been told the story of what the young people were capable of doing. And then I watched that summer as John Lewis told his own story, and told the story of these young people. And I watched these students and their faces light up with recognition of their own power, of what they are capable of doing. And I sat there at that computer and I thought, there should be a John Lewis comic book. And so the next day, we went back to work. Folks started asking, how do we teach young people about the civil rights movement? This was a constant question. How do we teach them how to organize? How do we engage them in the political process? And I raised my hand. And I said, I think the congressman should write a comic book. Yep. And the congressman was really sweet about it, right? He said, oh. Maybe. If you ever get a chance to work in politics, you will very quickly find that maybe is a nice way of saying no. But I couldn't give up on this idea. Here, I've been a comics fan since I was a little kid. I was raised by a single mother. My father was a Muslim immigrant. Yeah. Yeah. But I was raised by a single mom who I mean, look, we know single moms get the short end of the stick, right? You get raised by a single mom, you spend most of your childhood asking why. Why they do that to you, Mom? Why can't you do that? Why is it that way? And it makes you angry. And my response to that, my mother always encouraged me to read. And being a little maladjusted, I started reading comic books instead. And I loved them because they were the stories of heroes. Heroes who wanted to do the right thing because it was the right thing to do. Granted, it was all too often the stories of white men in spandex. But to me, that was the closest thing I could get. That's what was available, and I loved them. And just like Nate developed his social consciousness with Chris Claremont's X-Men, my first comic book was Uncanny X-Men 317, with the lenticular cover, the Phalanx Covenant storyline. Anyway, comic fans know that one. And so, I kept bugging everybody. It just seemed self-evident to me. Whenever the question would come up and people would say, how do we reach young people? Here, Barack Obama had used social media. How do we engage more young people? Well, Congressman, I really think you need to think about this comic book. Okay. But I wouldn't give up until finally one day the congressman turned to me after I asked one more time. And he said, okay, I'll do it. But only if you write it with me. And that moment changed my life forever. Now, how do you get from there to here? You know, sometimes looking back on it, I don't quite understand it. I went back to the congressman's office, worked full-time there. I decided to go back to grad school at night. Any of y'all been to grad school at night? Yeah. And we started working on these comic books. There's a lot of late nights, with long weekends. I called the congressman, I'd interview him. Sometimes I'd fall asleep on the phone. Sometimes he'd fall asleep on the phone. You just hear this little snore. You don't actually snore. But we worked. And if I'm totally honest, most of the publishers I approached with said, no, that's a crazy idea. And it took us 2 years to get a publishing contract, to get a script put together, to find a home, and ultimately to get to work with me. And we didn't know if it was going to work. Not until just before book one came out. And I got a phone call from a reporter at a conservative newspaper. And he said, look, man, I'm really excited. I got your book. I read it and I loved it. And I just wanted you to know, I don't usually do this, but I liked it so much I gave it to my 9-year-old son. And I wanted you to know that he read it, and he went and he put on his Sunday suit, and now he's marching around my house demanding the Powell. Imagine if we instill social consciousness in every young person in America. The only way we're going to do that is actually through a comic book. I know that might not be the first thing that comes to mind for many of you. But if you understand this generation, you understand that they're digital natives. They grew up on the internet. The internet is essentially sequential storytelling, visual sequential narrative. What is a meme or a tweet but words and pictures put together to tell a story? And so if we're going to reach this generation, if we're going to reach them in a way that burrows deep into their heart and makes this something they're willing to fight for, we're going to have to use their language to do it. Now, as I mentioned, I tweet for a living. And one of the things I like to ask young people when we go speak to them is, what would Dr. King have tweeted? What would Gandhi have posted? How would they have used these tools? You see, if we take March and we show this generation the fundamentals, the way another generation was able to use, they didn't have a cell phone, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have a fax machine. If we show them what they were able to do with mimeograph machines and pieces of paper, and this generation that has the tools and the technology to organize on a scale that the face of this earth has never seen before, and they find their inspiration, they find their tool or tactic, the new sit-in, the new freedom ride, the new freedom summer. Imagine what they can do. Imagine what's possible. There's something in this country called the 9-word problem. It's a term coined by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Essentially, it says that the vast majority of students graduate from high school in America knowing only 9 words about the civil rights movement. They know Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, and that's it. How can you understand the politics of today if you don't understand the civil rights movement? But March is changing that. We've got it in schools in all 50 states. We're working on some of the largest school systems in the country. New York City has already adopted. San Francisco Unified, Atlanta Public Schools, Nashville Public Schools. The list goes on. But we have to keep pushing. We have to make sure that it is in every school in America, that every young person reads it. It's the only way we can fight back. And in particular, we spend a lot of our time coming to colleges because college students are the most free. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Greensboro Four are freshmen in college. And so when we have universities like Michigan State or Marquette, Georgia State, University of Utah, University of Illinois, University of Maryland, all these schools, they use it as their first year reading text. So we go, we speak to the kids, we do workshops, we talk to them. Because somewhere along the line, there will be a new Azelle Blair or Joseph McNeil. Those are two of the Greensboro Four. There will be a new moment of inspiration that comes where they use the technology and they use the fundamentals and the lessons of the civil rights movement to find that moment that puts pressure on our government, on our elected officials, to bring about change. Now, where do I think they should start? I think they should start with student loans. It's not that I believe that's the only evil, let's be clear. But as the congressman once said to Thurgood Marshall, I'm interested in starting a revolution, not winning a single battle. If we can lift the burden of debt, then we can create an activist generation. You can't graduate from college with $100,000 in debt and go take a job making $25,000 a year working as a field organizer. It just doesn't work. Put it to you another way. When John Lewis got married in December of 1968, the wedding announcement read, Lillian Miles to wed unemployed political activist John Lewis. People who are ahead of their time pay a price. And we have to lift the burden of debt so that another generation is free to pay that price for us. I'll tell you one more story. When I was in high school, I would bring my comics to class. Yep. And I got caught by my English teacher when I left them out on my desk. When class had started, she took them away. She said, you can't have those out right now. Those aren't real books. Well, I got to go back to my high school. And I got to have a wonderful conversation with that same teacher about her experiences teaching our graphic novels in that class. And Congressman Lewis came too. I don't tell that story as any form of comeuppance to the teacher. She's doing the Lord's work. Being a teacher is hard. Yes. And frankly, she was expressing the prevailing wisdom of the time. She wasn't the only one who thought that. But I tell that story as an example of the power of an idea whose time has come. And I offer it as an example of the brief period in which change is possible. So as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, there is no sound more powerful than the marching feet of a determined people. I ask you all, join us. March. Thank you.
How's it going? Wait, can y'all hear me? All right. Sounds good. Okay, there we go. So, I'm the artist on March. Thank you very much for having me. So I'm from just up the road in North Little Rock, Arkansas, relatively speaking, that is. I also grew up in my elementary school years, as you heard, in Montgomery, Alabama. My parents are baby boomers from northern Mississippi. Now, as a kid in the mid-1980s, thanks to my parents, I did grow up with a very basic working knowledge of just, key moments and key figures from the civil rights movement. And that was something that I really did take for granted all the way well into adulthood. That was just sort of a default part of a kid's education growing up in America. But their stories, whether it was historical information or whether it was personal anecdotes from their life and their experience in northern Mississippi, oftentimes it was sort of punctuated by this exception or this dismissal. Like, oh, but that was a different time. Like, this is not that. These aren't the droids you're looking for. And I didn't have the vocabulary for this yet, but that was really one of my first experiences with cognitive dissonance, where, like Congressman Lewis was saying, if you want to come tell me that nothing has changed, come walk in my shoes and I will show you change. In balancing that statement and balancing what my parents were trying to impart to me with the world that I was seeing around me, just 15 years or 20 years removed from the very present shadow of the specter of the Jim Crow South in central Alabama. I didn't quite know what they were really trying to get at by saying, that was a different time, this is not that. It was especially difficult even, as a 5-year-old driving past a fully costumed clown circle in a town square at high noon outside of Anniston, Alabama, and not understanding how both of those concepts could be simultaneously true. In addition, a lot of the grainy black and white footage and documentation of the era that I had seen growing up as a kid, and a lot of it was footage, of locations that I was personally familiar with. Being able to watch footage and see photography of stuff that was happening on the streets of Montgomery, like 3 miles from my house, places that I had actually visited in my time as a kid. It still didn't quite seem to be part of the same reality, part of the same continuum in which I lived. And I think a lot of it, generationally speaking, was that transition from black and white to color in terms of TV, in terms of photography. That definitely played a part. But it sort of layered everything with this abstraction. And so later on, once I did begin my work on March, my personal mandate was to destroy that layer of abstraction, to answer the question that I had as a 7-year-old or as an 8-year-old, to reckon with it. Because I don't need to tell you that losing that sense of continuity, being that this is the same world we're occupying, and the parties involved in this history that we have all hopefully had a chance to explore or experience in some way. These are people who could have been, or possibly were, your neighbors, your family, who could have been you. And I don't need to tell you that losing that sense of continuity is the kind of thing that allows you to wake up in the world of 2017. And here we all are. Also with March, to sort of press that whenever possible, the gains of the movement's efforts, the gains in social progress, the gains in legislation, these aren't things that you just correct once. And that's, again, something that I feel I took for granted until well into my adult life. These are things which require constant diligence. You can't correct them once and move on. We've seen that in real time. The week that March Bill 1 came out was when the Supreme Court gutted the key component of the Voting Rights Act itself. So y'all, I've been making comics for 27 years, publishing for 25, we've talked about the X-Men several times already. But I want to, it's been amazing as a cartoonist and as a comic book nerd to be able to play some little part in helping advance the perceived legitimacy of comics as a medium, of graphic novels as a format, of their legitimacy as literature, as fine art, as history, as memoir. But I definitely want to take one more second to stick up for comics themselves, because I feel like a lot of that argument has to do with being like, oh, guess what? Comics, it's not like superheroes and stuff anymore, but it is also superheroes and stuff anymore. So, my life not only was my life changed, my eyes were opened thanks to X-Men and thanks to Daredevil, and thanks to a number of other mainstream superhero comics. But, getting to have these conversations later in life with my parents, I remember there's an X-Men spin-off titled New Mutants, and there was an issue that I was reading in 7th grade where a kid in a neighboring school who had these developing mutant powers and was getting bullied on wound up committing suicide. And so Kitty Pryde went and delivered this eulogy for her friend, this recently departed friend, that really laid out these principles of oppression and division and alienation. And this monologue really moved me. And I remember going into the kitchen where my parents were sitting one night and just reading this monologue to them. And then in a very dramatic 7th grade way, I'm sure I stormed back off. Slayer or whatever. But much later in life, they were like, yeah, I forgot all about that kind of. And my parents were like, oh yeah, when you left, they were like, how is it a comic? Was it a superhero comic? What is he reading? What is this stuff? It's all comics. And for a lot of people, March Book 1 is the first graphic novel they've ever read, which is amazing. But if that's the case, please don't let it end here. Far beyond that, comics have changed my life over and over and over again. And so, welcome, I'm glad you got your foot in the water, but it's okay to dive in, seriously. So, comics. As artists on March, my primary responsibility, I think, was to balance an accurate, responsible representation of what became hundreds of real historical human beings from the world we occupy, many of whom are still with us today, many of whom are not. And to balance that with a very intimate, emotional, subjective experience, which at times centers around the experiences of young John Lewis and then broadens as the scope and scale of the story broadens. I was able to kind of hit the ground running with March thanks to Southeast Texas, in fact. Right before we got started on March, I had recently drawn a graphic novel called The Silence of Our Friends, which is based on some historical events which happened in Houston and Sharpstown, Texas in 66, 67, 68, sort of set against the backdrop of an often forgotten chapter in the Civil Rights Movement, which took place at TSU. And I think a lot of the reference, the research, the nuts and bolts, the working with a writer on a nonfiction comic really allowed me to see what potentially I was getting into with this project and let me hit the ground running so that we can devote as much time as possible to advancing this narrative even further as the stakes in real time became higher and higher. Another important thing was to emphasize the sheer youth of the young people of the movement. And this is another thing that until 5, 6, 7 years ago, I really did take for granted. Looking at that grainy black and white footage, for most of my life, it's easy to move through this documentation and really not be like, oh, that's an 18-year-old. Those are some 21-year-olds. These are people, moving the dial, shaping the very fabric of our society. But now as a 38-year-old, I can, you can reach back and you can time telescopes in this very weird way. That even as a parent, I look back on an 18-year-old now, and I'm like, you're a baby. And it was important to emphasize that. And whenever I was successful at it, I think it's crucial to understand that this is something that sort of goes against the more convenient narrative, the story of gods and kings, the story of the 9-word problem of Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, I have a dream, that's the civil rights movement. Undermining that is essential for the survival of all of us. and for the survival of our society itself. Now, moving into March Book 2, and the primary focus in a lot of ways was to highlight how the relatively modest gains of the sit-in and stand-in movements, the legislative and social gains, the legal gains, were met by such a disproportionate backlash in violence in legislation. And physical violence itself became an increasingly necessary part of our narrative, real historical violence. And so that balance between the experience of the storytelling and the responsibility, the accuracy within the book, became elevated. There are moments where I would catch myself, and I've read the script, I've read the research, I know what I'm getting into, but at the drawing table, drawing a massacre against the Freedom Riders at the Montgomery bus station, there are these moments where I caught that physical repulsion in my stomach, even though I knew what I was getting into drawing these scenes, and I had to kind of stop myself and be like, recognize that repulsion. That physical response is meaningful and it's powerful, and push it in the best and most respectful way you can. Being very well versed in visual depictions of violence in comics, I also kind of had to turn everything that I knew about telling action scenes and depicting violence, I had to kind of turn it upside down, as virtually all of that had been fiction my entire life. Whenever it was done properly, there are moments where those scenes in March should read as horror. There's a value and there's a strength in that, in terms of how it affects us personally and what we do with that, taking it back out into the world, to emphasize that this is something that happened and that continues to happen to this day, again, because of people who could have been, and perhaps were, your neighbors, your family, who could have been you. By turning the camera in my storytelling 180 at times to force the reader into a position where they are a white supremacist perpetrating violence against a freedom rider, that level of discomfort and shock and nausea, just at being a reader or a viewer, and again, even being at the table, I'm doing it and still it's affecting me. That is the power that is often utterly unique to comics. I try to push that whenever possible. When we moved into book 3, the overarching theme that I feel like we all needed to push was that of disagreement, of dissent. Not just from the movement against Jim Crow South, against the dominant structures within the United States, but within the movement itself. Not only was there this intergenerational conflict occurring, but even within the young people of the movement, there were increasingly pronounced differences in philosophy, in strategies, in tactics, in how to get this done and why. And these disagreements were heated, they were personal. They led to massive schisms between a lot of these activists. People would leave meetings, really angry at each other and hurt. But also to emphasize that those people, after storming out of those meetings, would usually show up in the streets together the next day because the job still had to be done. And in the 21st century, particularly with online justice and living in a world of trolls and living in a world of shaming, living in a world where it's so easy to block and mute and unfollow and dismiss people. And I'm very guilty of it too. I think that's one of my worst personal qualities. I'm very dismissive. It's important to recognize that whenever possible, we have the choice to work together with people on the issues on which we agree, even though you might have considerable differences to grapple with, that should be grappled with. Yes. And so in that, when we're trying to wrap up what I'll just call the story within the March trilogy, one of the biggest questions was, where do we end the narrative arc? This isn't a clean victory. It's not a clean end. Again, you don't need me to tell you that. Look around, it's 2017. To emphasize that, as Congressman Lewis says, it's not a struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year, it's a struggle of a lifetime, many lifetimes. We found a narrative arc that worked, but we wanted to emphasize that it is never a clean victory. That these efforts, these struggles, are perpetually ongoing. And if this is a roadmap to change, what is the distance traveled? Being able to finally answer that question. Really, that was at the core of my question as a 7-year-old or whatever. What do my parents mean when they're trying to talk about the distance traveled? Being able to answer that is such a good start. Now, I almost immediately identified with John Lewis as a 6-year-old. We did grow up as 6-year-olds, though a generation apart and in a very different context. We grew up very close to each other geographically, but specifically it's the gravity, the intensity through which he viewed the world around him. And at a very early age, that deeply crystallized sense of fairness and justice. And I have 2 kids. My oldest one is 5. And I've been able to see it as a parent. By the time a kid is 3, one of the first, sort of higher social concepts they get when relating to people is what is fair and what is unfair, what is just and what is unjust. By the time they're 4, they know what a bully is. They've experienced having a bully, and at times they've found themselves, they've been caught being a bully. And in real time, while working on March, I started reading March Book 1 in increments with my daughter at 4 and at 5 at her request. And it amazed me just, by seeing where she was in the world with her worldview, her rapidly expanding worldview, how easily these concepts translated. My wife, Rachel, and I sometimes, we know that it's very encouraging that at a certain point, we think we're cool parents, we're really progressive, we're trying to be really thoughtful and mindful, we try to do a good job, but at a certain point, we will be out of touch about something. We will be perceived as dinosaurs by our kids and by their generation, and they'll call us out on it, just like I did to my parents. But that's the kind of thing where, when that happens, again, you have to notice it, and you have to embrace that. Because that is the moment where you're like, oh, now it's my responsibility to I need to see where my kids and their generation are, and it's my job to keep up with them, with where they are heading in the world and where they are heading with the torch that has been passed to them. So with March, I think one thing that's important is to emphasize, again, that this is what a committed, dedicated group of 20-year-olds were able to do. Not just even though they were just 20, but especially because they were 20. And when I think back to when I was 20, I was like, well, what was I doing? Or more importantly, what did I think I was doing, at least? For those of you who may be under 20, the question then is, what will you do when you are 20? The challenge. And the good news is that you and you alone get to determine that. But this is not a drill, and it never was, but you know that. Thank you, y'all.